Hey guys, welcome to my July reading wrap-up, which I think things kind of continued in the same vein. They ended in June, which is much better than the beginning of June. I read a lot of good books in July, a lot of 4 stars, not a ton of winners, but also not a ton that I very much disliked. So I feel like that's still a win. I am going to share a bunch of clips like I usually do, and we're going to get into my thoughts on all the books. But before we do that, this Thursday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, we're going to be doing the live for Chronicles of Avonlea and talking about the short stories in here. Since we've been doing a book a month with the Year of Maud, onto this one, and then sometime later in August I will share when we're going to be doing the live for August's book, which is The Story Girl. So stay tuned for that. I'll either announce it in a video or in a post on my community tab or in a newsletter. Somewhere I will share it. Mark it in your calendars if you don't want to forget. And then let's get into all my clips of my different books that I read this month. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on some of these books. Okay guys, first reading wrap up. We are 7 days in, like we're just at the start of the 7th day of the month. And I have 2, 4, 5 books to update you on. Reading slump begun. Hopefully it doesn't come back at all in July. I'll flip my books over so we can talk about them in the order that I finished them. I've also only completed physical books so far this month. I do have some ebooks on the go, but there is something nice about seeing your stack physically build up, I've got to say. So the first book I finished was And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. My video trying to solve this will already be live on my channel, so I don't want to say too much because there's a whole separate video on it, but this is one of Agatha Christie's most brilliant, most well-known, most well-loved books. She took 10 people, put them on an island, and they started getting picked off one by one, and you gotta figure out who done it. Who's picking these people off? This was actually my second time reading it, and I didn't know what was going to happen the second time through. I do know what's going to happen right now is I'm going to change my battery, and then I'll come back and talk more. Okay, now we've got lots of charge, lots of time to talk about my books. Yeah, I love taking time to try to solve Agatha Christie's books. I don't solve them very often. I actually don't know offhand what my actual ratio is of the ones that I figured out, or at least suspected I'd figured out, versus the ones I didn't, but it's very low. And I love that. I love the suspense, the surprise, and if you can have just as much fun rereading a mystery book, a whodunit, I mean, I think that's a sign of both a great writer and a terrible memory, but hey, if a terrible memory means I can enjoy a book like it's the first time reading it, I mean, I'm not going to complain about that. So yeah, I won't say more, but definitely read this one of hers if you haven't. It's one of the best for a reason. Then I did another reread. My first 2 books of the month were rereads. I reread the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society and loved it more than the first time. Apparently I'd only given it 4 stars on my first read through, and I've bumped it to 5 stars now. We are set both in London with an author. This is post World War II, and then Guernsey. We do a lot of letter writing between this author in London and a whole schwack load of people on Guernsey. It starts out because this man somehow bought a used book and it had this lady's address in it, and Guernsey doesn't have a lot of books, and he's looking for some suggestions. So he takes a chance and he writes a letter to the person that had previously owned the book, and it starts this correspondence, and it's just a wonderful look at the end of World War II, which I feel like we don't get a whole lot of, like people that are still recovering. In addition, we learn a lot about Guernsey being occupied by the Germans in World War II, something I knew nothing about prior to my first time reading this. There's so much that goes on in this book. I loved the writing, the humor. If you've read Helene Hanff's 84 Charing Cross Road, I feel like this has those vibes, like her humor, the post-World War II rationing, and I don't know, it feels a lot like that. So if you liked one of them, read the other one for sure. Yeah, this is just gonna be one that stays on my shelves. It's earned its spot there. Then I read one that I thought was gonna be difficult for me, but I got the audiobook and blasted through. I read/listened to Perelandra by C.S. Lewis. So this is the second book in the Space Trilogy, which means I only have one more left, even though it's like 3 times as long. This is a science fiction book where we follow Dr. Ransom. In book 1, he went to Mars. I read that one so many years ago. Honestly, I didn't remember much. Comes across a bunch of different creatures. In this one, he's going to Venus, and we really have kind of a retelling of Adam and Eve in Venus with Dr. Ransom. It's an interesting concept. I just personally really dislike the writing style. This is to me what classic science fiction is, which I have a hard time explaining, but in the classic science fiction that I'm thinking of, characters get into these situations, whether it's they're on a different planet or, you know, they're journeying to the center of the earth, or they're stranded on an island, and they just seem to know things. Like they see a situation that they've never seen before, and they just know what to do. I feel like it's a lot heavier on the fiction than on the science, where a lot of science fiction now is kind of more of a balance. I mean, obviously it is fiction, mainstream science fiction, but they try to make it a little bit realistic, and I feel like this is just so unrealistic. I have a hard time reading it. Yeah, so I'm going to finish the 3rd book, but I'm gonna give myself a little bit of break, a little bit of a pat on the back for getting this one done after procrastinating for a while. I think the series is on my 40 before 40, so it will be less than a year before I finish the series out. Yeah, it's not going down as a favorite for sure. And then I finished a collection of poems, The Wilderness That Bears Your Name by James A. Pearson. I first heard about his poetry in a video by Randy Lynn Reed. I checked out his Instagram, liked what I saw there, read this collection of poems. He is from, or at least lives in Oregon, in the Pacific Northwest, somewhere around there. And I feel like some of his poems feel like that. I liked that idea. He starts out with a prologue, and in one of Randy Lynn Reed's videos, she read, I can't remember if it was West or if it was East, one of his poems. They're the 4 directions. So we've got South, West, North, and East. I enjoyed West and East quite a bit, and then proceeded to just not really enjoy the rest of the poetry. I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, I bought a bunch of poetry for my birthday. This is the first collection that I finished, and hopefully it's going to be the most disappointing. I feel like I know a little bit more about the other ones, and I think they have some other things that I'm going to enjoy. So glad I read it. Like I said, there was a couple poems I liked, but for the most part, it just wasn't really for me. He does have it separated into seasons. I like that idea. He's got mud season in between winter and spring, which is probably applicable for where he lives. Don't feel like that's very applicable here, but anyway, read it. Not a whole lot I'll reread there. And then yesterday, I finished Everything Sad is Untrue. This is a middle grade book that I think is hard to explain. So it is like a memoir. Daniel, I don't know how to say his last name. His original name was like Kosaru, but probably not, because I probably can't actually say it. He flips back and forth between so many different things. There are 0 chapters in this book. It's just separated, like sometimes some of the sections are just a couple lines long. We get flashes of his life from toddlerhood to probably the age of 12-ish. I don't remember exactly. Flashes of his life, some myths, because he was from Iran and ended up being a refugee. His family they were refugees in Italy for a while, and then they eventually moved to the US. We've got some memories of his family, and it's very disjointed. In the end, it was interesting to see the threads come together, but it was very chaotic to read. His mother ended up becoming a Christian, and therefore they had to flee Iran. His father decided to stay back, and so it's like him dealing with so many different pieces of trauma, leaving his stuffy behind, his sheep, and there's so many good elements. And I think I would have liked this book more if it wasn't a middle grade book. So I was thinking about my 12-year-old son reading this book, and I just think he'd be very confused because it felt quite disjointed for a lot of it. Just a lot of threads that were like left for a very long time before they got picked back up again. So it was interesting. I loved him. Like, his mother is the hero of this story. She is very strong. He calls her unstoppable. I loved seeing how much he admired his mother. But there was just so much other stuff that it just felt a bit chaotic. And even my daughter, she loved it. I think she gave it 5 stars. She said it felt like maybe she didn't give it 5 stars. She said it felt like a free verse book to her, which she often struggles with. Just a little bit poetic. I know some people love this book. I'm definitely in the minority. I think I gave it 4 stars in the end. I think I'm kind of in the minority though. A lot of people, it's a solid 5-star book. And for me, it was just the chaos of all the threads that were being woven together. And then keeping in mind that this is geared towards middle grade, that brought it down. I think he could have done this as it is, but made it an adult book, and it maybe would have been a 5-star book. But to me, it just like didn't quite hit the mark, knowing this is geared towards middle grade. So overall, it's been a good start to the month. I mean, I've finished 5 books and I'm like halfway through 2 others. So Slumpy Chantel is done for now, hopefully. Hopefully that just keeps going. And I will hopefully be back soon with a bunch more books to update you on. Time for another reading check-in. This was an ebook reading week, but I have 3 ebooks to share, and I gave them all 5 stars on Goodreads, which means they're anywhere from like 4.5 to 5 stars. The first one I read is Girl Lost by Kate Angelo. So all 3 of these are NetGalley arcs, and okay, so this, I'll try to remember to tell you when they're coming out. Girl Lost is coming out September 23rd. And this gave me Dee Henderson's O'Malley series vibes, because this is going to be a series. And I'm assuming that the series is based off of these kids. There's this guy in this town, his name is, I forget his name, Striker? Something like that. He has taken kids that are kind of living a bit of a rough life, are maybe facing juvie, and he puts them into this program he is called the Warrior Program, which is a mixed martial arts program. He's a believer. He works with them like physically, gets them trained up, and then he gets local law enforcement to also train and work alongside these kids that are struggling, facing time in jail, to hopefully eliminate that possibility. Really cool setup. And there's like a group of them that were the first ones, and they remind me so much of the O'Malley kids from that series of Dee Henderson's. And so we follow, what was her name? Luna is our first person that we follow, as well as a guy, and his name was Corbin. So Luna and Corbin were part of this Warriors program, and Luna actually became pregnant as a teenager, and Corbin said he didn't want anything to do with the baby, so she put the baby up for adoption. She's coming back into town after being gone for close to 20 years, I think, and she wants to find her baby. And, okay, what is his name? Striker, yes. He did like a private adoption. He kind of arranged. Oh, my rings are stuck. Too warm right now. He arranged the adoption, and right as she's about to go talk to him, she sees him get kidnapped. And suddenly we are kind of trying to find him, and there's a girl locally that has been missing, and there's some kind of connection down the road. And Luna has been part of the CIA undercover for a number of years, which is really cool. And then Corbin is a special agent. I don't remember who he's with, but I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Definitely those O'Malley vibes without it being like she completely ripped it off. It didn't feel like that at all. The only problem I have with Christian romantic suspense, I love suspense. That's why I like it. I love the faith elements. That's why I like the Christian part. I'm even good with like the romantic part, the subplot, but I wish we could have some suspense on the romantic part. I really get so annoyed. And it's not like this book in particular, but just every book does this. We get both perspectives, and you just know right off the bat, oh, those two are going to end up together. And I like suspense. I want the suspense to carry through with the romance a little bit. There have been a few Christian romantic suspense books where the love interest has been the bad guy, and like when I get to the end and I figure that out, or like find that out, I'm like, yes, thank you, something different. So I don't like the predictability of the romance part, or like, yeah, I just wish it was a little different. Anyway, that's kind of beside the point. I really enjoyed that book, and like some of the heavy themes that come out of that, I can't really say because it would be spoilery, but definitely recommend it. Then coming out October 7th is Stand Firm and Act Like Men by Joby Martin. This is a non-fiction book geared towards men. I have a kid calling me. I'll be back. Okay. Get the brain back. We were talking about Stand Firm. Oh yeah, this book, I feel like has a lot of similarities to Brant Hansen's The Men We Need. This one I feel like is geared a little bit more towards married men. Obviously I'm not the target market, but I heard Joby speak at the Acts 29 conference last spring. Really liked his speaking. He writes the same way. He's from the South. He is like a manly man. So I think his book is very needed, because where Brant Hansen, he's awesome. Okay. Really enjoy his writing and stuff as well. His book is very needed, but he plays the accordion, and like he's a bit nerdy, and his book is kind of geared towards, I think the subtitle says something about the avid indoorsman, whereas Joby Martin's kind of the other way. And I think his book, Joby Martin's Stand Firm and Act Like Men, is really good for guys that don't read, like maybe the guys that kind of work more with their hands. Stereotyping here, are often not the ones that read as much. And I think like Joby Martin's favorite color is camo, if that gives you any idea of like who he is and who he's kind of writing towards. But it was very good, very well written. I highlighted a bunch of things, and not that like my husband should do this, but I think that I'm going to get my son to read it in a few years, because it's geared a little bit more towards married men. It's like I want him to be more of a man by the time he reads it. Definitely recommend it. He's got like great humor, but also goes really deep. So there was that one, and then the last one was another Christian romantic suspense called Fire Mountain, and this is by my Goodreads isn't loading, Dana something or other. And this one had a very unique premise, because our main character is a female truck driver. She just at the opening of the book, she wakes up, she's crashed her semi, and she's on a volcano that's about to erupt. This was supposed to be her last haul, and as she comes to, she has a bit of a concussion, so she's a little out of it. Finds out there's a baby strapped in to her rig as well. Can't remember how the baby got there, and there's bullet holes and a bloody handprint on the door, and she can't remember like the last 24 hours. So it's a very unique premise. I've never read anything like that before. Once again, we have a guy that comes in right away, and it's like, okay, well, got the romance part figured out. No suspense there again. Sometimes I would like a little bit more suspense in the romance department. But they are trying to flee. Like everyone has already evacuated this area. The volcano is like causing earthquakes and ash, and it's dangerous, and they've got this baby, and there's people after them. So there's a lot going on. It felt like a very unique premise. I don't know, is this her debut novel? Has she written other books? Goodreads is still not loading. Let's clear it and try to open that again. I would definitely read more of her books, but reading 2 Christian romantic suspense books so close together, like, I need a bit of a break. Okay, Fire Mountain, Dana Mentink. Oh, this is going to be the first book in a series. She has written quite a few love-inspired suspense books, apparently. And this is the first book in the Elements of Danger series. That's all for now. I feel like I was reading more this week. I mean, I'm in the middle of some books, but that is all that I've finished, which is interesting to me just right now, comparing my first reading week versus my second reading week, going from physical books to ebooks. I read more physical books. Do I read more when I'm reading physically? Interesting. I'm gonna keep trying this experiment, paying attention to this, and see where it goes. I'm sure I'll be back again, well, immediately for you with another update. Okay, time for another reading check-in where I've finished quite a few books thanks to my Patreon page count reading challenge. It always motivates me to get some good reading in. I read some of these before that. The first one is Sense and Suitability by Pepper Basham. And I need to give this a disclaimer because I intentionally read this book for an out of my comfort zone book for Tiffany's summer book bingo. So I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, and I think Storygraph as well. It's not my kind of book, but I also wanted to be generous because I went into it knowing it wasn't my kind of book. So this is a Regency romance book where we have a female that is an author, and she does it on the sly. Only her cousin knows about it. He deals with her publisher. He deals with the money, and she just writes the books. A couple of years before the book starts, she got snubbed by a guy. It was her first season out, and he was going to propose. Instead, he broke it off. There's these rumors about how he's just been traveling Europe and breaking hearts as he goes. And we also get to see his perspective and find out that things are not quite as they appear. He actually was traveling around to find his sister, who I think he eloped or something. He's hard up for money. He needs, in this book and during this time, he needs to find a rich wife to help him get out of these debts that his father and cousin, who had recently died, left him. And in my opinion, well, it is a very predictable book. It's supposed to be a very predictable book. It's a romance. So I get that. I didn't want to dock points off for that, stars off for that, because I know that, and I know that's not my thing, and I still chose to read it. So not my favorite, but I expected that. Then I read Chronicles of Avonlea. Hopefully I will have announced when we're doing our live for this. I just don't know because life is so busy right now. But these are short stories by L.M. Montgomery, 12 short stories. I went and I actually, let's see if I can find it. I took notes. I left a little sticky note at the end of each story, sharing a couple little thoughts. Obviously, with a short story collection, there's quite the variety. I think I also gave this one 4 stars. I enjoyed most. There was a few that were like, okay, kind of meh. But for the most part, I enjoyed them. She does such a good job with like quirky characters and found family. And like there's a lot of good wholesomeness to her stories. So I always appreciate it. It's the reason I am doing a year of mod. I love her writing and her stories. And this was my first time reading these through. So that was fun. Ooh, then I read The Lost Prince by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is a bit of a chunker. Read it for my Patreon page count reading challenge. And in this one, we follow 12-year-old Marco. He has moved around with his father his whole life. And they're originally from this country called Samavia, I think. And 500 years before the true prince of that land, he fled. And there's this rumor that his ancestors, like, you know, the prince's son passed on information to his son, who passed on information to his son for 500 years. And that there's this secret party that is backing the lost prince. And Marco gets to help spread the word that apparently the lost prince is coming back soon. And so this book is his story of doing that. I'm going to assign this to my 12-year-old son for reading for the homeschool for this next year. I think he might actually enjoy it. I prefer Frances Hodgson Burnett's like The Secret Garden and A Little Princess. Her girl books. I wasn't a fan of Little Lord Fauntleroy. Didn't love this one, but there are certain aspects that I loved, and then yet there were certain aspects that I'll explain. So Marco loves his father. He respects his father so much. And then there's another character that we get introduced to that also just pretty much worships Marco's father. And there are some good lines and lessons that I feel like are very spiritual, like Christian. In some ways, it almost seemed like Marco's father was Christ and like their obedience to him. I felt like I could glean a lot from that. But then also, and Frances Hodgson Burnett does this in her books, she leans a little bit more spiritualism-y. In this one, it's almost like Buddhist, but then she kind of flips back and forth, so I'm a little bit confused. I've never looked her up. I'm curious to know her religious background because her books are a little, I don't know, they feel a little bit more like spiritual than Christian, and I don't know if that's just her young characters not knowing the words for things or what it is. But I would like my son to read this and then us to have some conversations about it as he reads it. Then I read Poetic Surrender by Molly McTernan. This is actually the shortest book on my physical TBR, or it was, and so that checked that box for Tiffany's Summer Book Bingo. And this is just a sweet collection of poetry, and she has it separated by different categories. So we've got faith, colors, time, emotions, me, you, animals, prayer, books, music, stories, and faith. It starts with faith and it ends with faith. So I enjoyed it. I'm excited to read more of what Molly writes in the future. And the last book that I finished is Out of the Easy by Ruta Sepetys. And interesting book. Okay. I felt like I just didn't know where we were going with this one. We are set in 1950s New Orleans with a 18-year-old girl who is the daughter of a brothel prostitute. She's actually been living above a bookstore since she was 12 because she just doesn't want anything to do with her mother. Although she works for the house that her mother lives in and does some cleaning. So she hasn't like completely cut her or that whole scene out of her life, but she doesn't want to like be her mother in any way. There's a lot going on in this book. She wants to go to college. She's very smart, but she has a lot of barriers, part of it being her lineage, especially during this time when that really mattered. I have been like waffling my thoughts on this book. First of all, it's not that Ruta Sepetys' books are necessarily completely squeaky clean. They're pretty hard and honest and raw, but this one, because of what Josie's mother does, like there's a lot more of that content in here. Like nothing graphic, but certain things talked about quite a bit. And then at the end, I was just like, I felt let down a little bit. I felt like we didn't get answers to everything. Not that everything needed to be, and everyone lived happily ever after. But I felt confused about a few of the threads from the book. Either they weren't, I think they just weren't explained enough. And I do believe that this is one of her first books that she wrote. I don't know the order of when she wrote them or anything, but definitely going down as my least favorite Ruta Sepetys, which I think I've given all of her other books 5 stars. So it doesn't mean a ton. It just felt a little bit more average and not really like what I would recommend unless you're a big fan of her writing. Now there's still a few more days left in the month. We're still doing the page count reading challenge. I'm going on a road trip. All of that will be in my reading vlog, my page count reading vlog, if you want to see some of the behind the scenes. But I'm hoping to get a lot more pages in and at least a few more books finished. Okay, and then I've got a couple more books to wrap things up with. Let's start with Two Girls Staring at a Ceiling. I read this during my page count reading challenge recently, and I didn't share much about it because it is free verse, so it's a pretty quick read. Plus, this was a reread for me because I read it 9 years ago, a couple months before I was diagnosed with Crohn's. And there's a teenage girl in here that's diagnosed with Crohn's. And when I read it, I had no idea that, like, in a few months, this was going to be my story. It's a YA free verse novel, and it's, like, kind of a little too YA, in my opinion. But also, I really enjoy the book for the connection that I have with it. Plus, it's really cool. So sometimes it's just a free verse, like a normal 1 column per page kind of idea. But sometimes there's 2 columns split by a line, and that is the two different girls, main characters, when they're on either side of the curtain. So they're in a hospital room together, and you can tell when they're both in the room, and sometimes one of them's talking to the other and one's not replying. So you can tell that the curtain is closed because of the line. And then when they open the curtain, then there's no line. I thought that was very fascinating. But yeah, we follow a girl who, I can't remember if she's done school. It's summertime. I can't remember if she has another year of school left or not, high school. And she ends up getting diagnosed with Crohn's. So we start with her in the ER, and she gets little blips of things because she's not fully conscious. And then we get her as she kind of goes through some denial. I don't know. It's not necessarily a book I would super recommend to people, but if you have some kind of connection like I do, I really appreciate that part of it. I've never read anything else by Lucy Frank. I have no idea what else she's written. I should actually check it out. But I've never read a book with a character with Crohn's before, so it has a special place in my heart for that reason. Another book I finished, the last physical book that I have, is Indigo Isle by T.I. Lowe. This one I also read during my page count reading challenge where I shared a vlog, and I picked this one up first from a stack of library books because it had a great first sentence. Actually, I'll read it to you. It, unfortunately, like the rest of the book, kind of doesn't follow the gothicness of the first sentence. So this is how it feels to be near death and utterly alone. Like, I love that sentence. It's so gripping and makes me want to read more. So we follow, what's our main character's name? Right, her name is Sunny. She left her home on the East Coast, Georgia, South Carolina, 15 years ago. She stole her parents' savings, went to California, Los Angeles to try to make it big, and has just stayed away. And her parents, I don't know, I feel like her family didn't really try to connect with her. They just kind of left her on her own. She is a location scout and location manager for movies. So it's a very different premise for me. I've never really read anything in that vein. Plus she has a YouTube channel as well. And during this one location scouting and time of filming, she comes across this place called Indigo Isle that she would like a few scenes to be filmed at. She tries to talk to the owner, but he's very much a recluse. He plays up the whole monster thing and scares people off of his island, but she's a bit persistent and gets to know him. There are some heavy themes in here. This is Christian fiction. It takes a long time before we see our main character kind of come around. So she comes from like a pretty gritty place to start. Usually with Christian fiction, I'm like confident in recommending it to anyone. This one I want to give a few more disclaimers for, because our main character is sexually active, kind of in an abusive way. There is some rape in here, and it's grittier than a lot of Christian fiction usually is, and it takes longer for our main character to kind of come around. But I do think that it is a little bit more realistic than a lot of Christian fiction in that way as well. So yeah, I'm definitely curious to read more by this author before. I know she has a book called Something About the Magnolias that I love the cover of. I don't actually know anything about it. So I'm gonna check out more. And then I think the last one that I have to wrap up is All That Really Matters by Nicole Deese. This is the first book in a duology, and it was very confusing while reading this book at the same time a little bit as All That Really Matters, because there are a few similarities between our main characters. And in All That Really Matters, our main character, she's a social media influencer. She has this brand, I think it's Makeup Matters with Molly or something like that, and she's a beauty influencer. And she is potentially on the radar to get a TV show, maybe a Netflix show or something, but she needs a little bit more of a well-rounded image. She needs to have some like social justice, some kind of like cause. So she tries to get in with this home that they take in kids that have aged out of foster care and try to help them get their feet under them. And she's completely just doing this out of wanting to grow her following and get this TV show. Because this was my friend recommendation for Tiffany's summer book bingo, because Reika has been wanting me to read it. And she was asking how it was going at the beginning. And I said, well, I sure hope our main character has some major character growth. I'm assuming she will. And I hope she dumps that boyfriend real fast, because he was a jerk. And I mean, that stuff happens pretty quickly. It's pretty easy to see that's kind of like the point of the book. Our main character is quite annoying at the beginning, just quite shallow, honestly. And there is more to her, but I don't know, it doesn't show at first. And thankfully she has a lot of growth. I'm definitely curious to read the second book in the series. Very obviously know who we're going to be following in that one by the end of the book. But that was my first book by Nicole Deese, and I have a few of hers on my radar. There's another, I think Fog Harbor is a series of hers I would like to read as well. So want to finish the duology up before getting to that. And then I think that is all the books that I read this month. Some good variety, just a lot of 4-star books, a lot that weren't super spectacular. When we had our Patreon book club, it was a little bit hard to pick a book to talk about because I didn't give very many 5 stars out, but also I didn't really hate any books, so I don't think. Okay, well, maybe C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy book 2, but that's not surprising. Overall, a good reading month. I want to hear how your month went. What were some of the highlight books for you? Are you interested in any of the books that I read, or have you already read them? Any thoughts you'd like to share? I always love chatting with you guys in the comments about the books that I'm reading and you're reading, and just books in general. So thanks for hanging out with me.